I flew 500 miles to surprise my daughter for her birthday. But the surprise was on me. Her house was abandoned. Her garden was dead. And a doctor at Cedar Sinai told me my little girl was in the ICU with stage 4 cancer. But the real horror wasn't the diagnosis. It was discovering where her husband was while she fought for her life. This is a story about a line that should never be crossed. If you believe in fighting for family, make sure you're subscribed and hit that bell. The last time I'd spoken to my daughter, just 2 days before booking my flight. I should have known. It wasn't anything she said. Not directly. It was the space between her words. I'd called, excited to tell her about a promotion my buddy at the plant had gotten, the kind of small-town news she used to find funny. "That's great. Dad," she'd said, her voice thin, distant. In the background, I heard Gary, her husband. His voice was sharp. "Impatient. Emily. Who is it? We're going to be late." "It's just my dad." "Honey." "Well, tell him you're busy. The reservation is at 8. There was no attempt to lower his voice. No pretense of courtesy. To him, I was an interruption, a nuisance. "I have to go. Dad, I'll call you tomorrow." She never did. I brushed it off. Gary was ambitious. Always networking. Always climbing. I'd mistaken his arrogance for drive. His impatience for passion. I told myself I was being an overprotective father. So, instead of probing, I decided to do something special. I booked a flight to Los Angeles to surprise her for her birthday. I imagined the look on her face. The happy shriek. The big hug I hadn't had in almost a year. The thought warmed me more than the lukewarm coffee the flight attendant served. The recycled air of the plane gave way to the hazy, sun-baked concrete smell of LAX. It was a sensory overload of hurried announcements, rolling suitcases, and 100 different conversations happening at once. I felt a little out of place. A Texas man in worn-in jeans and a plaid shirt, navigating a sea of sleek, fast-moving people. But the thought of seeing Emily pushed me forward. The 40-minute Uber ride to her suburban neighborhood was a blur of palm trees and traffic. I had the driver drop me off at the corner, wanting to walk the last few yards and savor the surprise. As I turned onto her street, a knot began to form in the pit of my stomach. From a distance, all the houses looked the same, manicured lawns, tiddy flower beds, all except one. Hers. The lawn was a patchwork of green and brittle, thirsty yellow. The rose bushes my wife had helped her plant years ago were drooping, their heads bowed in surrender to the sun. The mailbox was slightly ajar, stuffed so full that a cascade of junk mail and envelopes was spilling onto the ground. It looked unloved, abandoned. My heart started a low, heavy drumbeat against my ribs. I walked up the driveway, my boots crunching on dry leaves that should have been raked weeks ago. I had my own key, a spare she'd given me for emergencies. This was starting to feel like one. The key slid into the lock and turned with a familiar click. But the silence that greeted me when I pushed the door open was anything but. The air inside was thick and still, carrying the faint, sour smell of something left out too long. A fine layer of dust coated the dark wood of the entry table, a gray shroud over the life I imagined for them. I ran a finger across it, leaving a clean streak in the grime. In the living room, a half-empty glass of what might have been milk sat on the coffee table, a faint green ring of mold beginning to bloom on its surface. "Emily," I called out, my voice sounding unnaturally loud in the dead quiet. Gary? Nothing. Only the hum of the refrigerator. I walked through the downstairs rooms. Everything was neat, but in the way a hotel room is neat, impersonal, and cold. There were no signs of recent life. No shoes kicked off by the door. No jacket thrown over a chair. A sense of dread, cold and heavy, began to settle in my bones. As I stepped back outside, blinking in the harsh afternoon light, a woman from next door was watering her petunias. She was older, with kind eyes and a sun hat. Brenda. I remembered her from my last visit. She gave me a hesitant smile. Delbert? Is that you? I almost didn't recognize you. Hey, Brenda. Good to see you. I tried to sound casual, but my voice was tight. Just came in to surprise Emily for her birthday. Looks like I missed them. Are they on a trip? Brenda's smile faltered. She turned off the hose. The sudden silence, making my question hang in the air between us. Oh, she said, her brow furrowing with concern. A trip? I don't think so. Dear, I haven't seen Emily in... goodness. It must be 3, maybe 4 weeks now. The drumming in my chest grew louder. 4 weeks. What about Gary? Well, I see his car come and go, she said, lowering her voice slightly, as if sharing a secret. But it's odd. He never stays long. Just runs in, grabs a few things, and leaves in a hurry. The last time was maybe 2 days ago. I waved, but I don't think he saw me. 4 weeks. Gary coming and going alone. The words echoed in my head, refusing to make sense. My mind raced, searching for any explanation other than the one tightening its grip on my throat. I thanked Brenda, my words feeling clumsy and thick in my mouth, and went back inside the silent house. Panic, real and sharp, began to set in. I pulled out my phone, my thumb fumbling as I tapped Emily's name. It went straight to voicemail. Hey, you've reached Emily. Leave a message. Her voice was so bright, so full of life. It was a recording from a happier time, a lifetime ago. I tried Gary. No answer. Just the endless, hollow ringing. I paced the dusty living room, calling again and again. Voicemail. Ringing. Voicemail. Ringing. My breath grew short. My daughter, my only child, had vanished. My mind reeled. Had they fought? Did she leave him? Where would she go? Why wouldn't she call me? Then, a sliver of rational thought cut through the fog. The money? I remembered the joint savings account I'd set up for them when they got married. It was a substantial amount. A nest egg meant for a down payment on a bigger house. For the grandkids' college. Or for a real emergency. Just in case. I had told them, you never know. They probably just took a trip. A last-minute vacation to sort things out. They used the emergency fund. That had to be it. It was a flimsy hope. But it was the only thing I had. I sat on the edge of the sofa, my head in my hands, trying to will my phone to ring with a logical explanation. I decided to try Emily's number 1 last time. I needed to hear her cheerful voicemail message again. A reminder that she was okay. Somewhere. I held the phone to my ear. 1 ring, 2 rings. I braced for the voicemail. But then, a click. Someone picked up. A wave of relief washed over me. So powerful, it almost made me dizzy. Emily? Oh, thank God. Sweetheart, I was so worried. Where are you? The voice that answered was not my daughter's. It was a man, calm and professional. I'm sorry. You've reached the phone of a patient. My name is Dr. Evans. To whom am I speaking? The world tilted. Patient. The word didn't compute. What? What are you talking about? This is Delbert. I'm her father. Where is my daughter? There was a slight pause on the other end of the line. Mr. Johnson, your daughter, Emily, was admitted to Cedar Sinai Medical Center 3 weeks ago. Cedar Sinai. The hospital? The word slammed into me like a physical blow. Admitted. For what is she okay? Doctor. Evan's voice was gentle but firm. The kind of voice that was practiced in delivering terrible news. Sir, perhaps this is a conversation we should have in person, but since you're her father, Emily is in our intensive care unit. She has stage 4 ovarian cancer. Her condition is critical. The phone felt slippery in my suddenly numb hand. The dusty room, the sour smell, Brenda's worried face, it all snapped into a terrifying, coherent picture. 3 weeks. He said she'd been there 3 weeks. My own voice sounded like it was coming from a great distance. Her husband, Gary, is he there with her? Did you call him? We have tried to reach him multiple times. On sait, the doctor said, a note of professional weariness in his tone. We haven't been able to get a hold of him. My world didn't just crack, it atomized. It turned to dust and blew away on a cold, sterile wind. She was in the ICU, fighting for her life, and she was doing it alone. I don't remember saying goodbye to the doctor. My next conscious thought was of my hands gripping the steering wheel of the rental car, the key already in the ignition. My knuckles were white. The screen of my phone was lit up. The GPS app open. A calm. The female voice was waiting to give me directions to Cedar Sinai. As I pulled away from the curb, leaving the silent, neglected house behind, there was no longer a storm of questions in my mind. There was only one, burning through the shock and the grief with the force of a branding iron. Where was he? The GPS voice was a calm, cruel metronome, counting down the miles to a place I never wanted to be. Traffic on the 405 was a river of red taillights, each one a delay, an obstacle between me and my daughter. My hands were fused to the steering wheel, my knuckles pale mountains on a landscape of worn leather. The city of Los Angeles, a place I'd always associated with Emily's bright-eyed ambition and sunny postcards, now felt like a concrete maze designed to keep me from her. Every honk, every weaving car, every billboard promising a perfect life felt like a personal insult. Pulling into the parking garage of Cedar Sinai was like descending into a tomb. The air grew cool and tasted of concrete dust and exhaust fumes. I found a spot, killed the engine, and for a moment, I just sat there in the sudden, profound silence. The only sound was the frantic pounding of my own heart. I had to force my hand to release the wheel, had to command my legs to move, to carry me out of the car and towards the glass doors of the hospital. The lobby was a world of hushed efficiency. The air smelled sharp, a sterile, antiseptic scent that failed to cover the underlying odor of sickness and fear. It was the smell of controlled crisis. My boots squeaked on the polished linoleum floors, a rustic sound in a place of beeps and hisses from unseen machines. I got Emily's room number from a woman at the information desk whose sympathetic smile didn't quite reach her eyes. She'd seen 1,000 fathers like me, wandering in with terror etched onto their faces. The elevator ride to the ICU was silent, shared with a young doctor whose eyes were fixed on his tablet, and a woman silently weeping into a handful of tissues. No one spoke. We were all on our own private journeys to a place of pain. When the doors opened onto her floor, the sounds became more specific. The rhythmic whoosh of a ventilator, the steady, electronic pulse of a heart monitor, the quiet, urgent murmur of nurses' voices. Her room was at the end of the hall, room 714. I stood outside the door for a long moment, my hand hovering over the handle. I was terrified of what I would see on the other side. I was afraid of the stranger my daughter might have become, the person this disease was turning her into. I took a deep, shaky breath that did nothing to calm me and pushed the door open. And there she was. The vibrant, laughing woman from my memories was gone. In her place was a fragile, depleted version, a pale sketch of my daughter. She was swimming in a pale blue hospital gown, her body so thin that her collarbones and cheekbones seemed sharp enough to cut through her translucent skin. Her beautiful, thick brown hair, the hair I used to braid when she was a little girl, was thin and patchy. An IV line snaked from a bag of clear liquid into the back of her hand, held in place by a white bandage. Wires trailed from beneath her gown to a symphony of monitors beside the bed, each one blinking and tracing a fragile green line that represented her life. Her eyes were closed. For a moment, I was grateful. It gave me a second to rearrange the horror on my face into something resembling a calm, loving father. I moved quietly to her bedside, my boots feeling clumsy and loud. I reached out and gently touched her arm. Her skin was cool and dry, like paper. Her eyelids fluttered open. They seemed heavy, as if lifting them took a monumental effort. Her gaze was unfocused at first. Then it settled on me, a flicker of confusion, then recognition. A weak, trembling smile touched her chapped lips. Dad. Her voice was a wisp of sound, fragile and raspy. What are you doing here? Tears. I didn't know I was holding back, burned at the back of my eyes. I blinked them away, forcing a smile of my own. It's your birthday next week. Remember, I came to surprise you. A single tear traced a path from the corner of her eye into her hairline. Some surprise. I pulled the visitor's chair closer, my knees cracking as I sat. I took her hand, the one without the IV, and held it in both of mine. It felt as small and delicate as a bird's wing. Why didn't you call me? Sweetheart, why didn't you tell me? She looked away, her gaze fixing on the tangle of tubes and wires. A faint flush of shame colored her pale cheeks. I didn't want to worry you, she whispered. And Gary said it was better this way. He's been so busy with work. He's on a big business trip on the East Coast. A huge deal for his company. He felt terrible. He couldn't be here. The words hung in the sterile air. A business trip. I felt a cold, hard knot form in my gut. The lie was so thin, so flimsy. Yet she clung to it. Maybe she needed to believe it. Maybe the truth was too heavy for her to carry on top of everything else. I looked at her tired, hopeful face, and I knew I couldn't shatter that for her. Not yet. So I just squeezed her hand. Okay. Honey. Okay. Well, I'm here now. I'm not going anywhere. We sat in silence for a while. the only sounds being the quiet beeping of the machines. She asked about home, about my dog, about the guys at the plant. Small talk. We were building a fragile bridge of normalcy over a terrifying canyon of sickness and lies. She was trying so hard to be brave, and it was breaking my heart. After about 20 minutes, her eyelids began to droop again, the medication and the exhaustion pulling her back under. She was asleep in moments, her breathing shallow, but even. I watched her for a long time, a storm of grief and rage swirling inside me. He left her here. He left her to face this all by herself. The thought was a relentless hammer blow against my skull. That's when I heard it, a soft chime from the bedside table. Her phone, lying face down, had just lit up with a notification. It chimed again. My first instinct was to ignore it. It was her privacy. But Brenda's words came back to me. He just runs in, grabs a few things, and leaves in a hurry. He'd been here. He'd probably left the phone. Curiosity, sharp and ugly, got the better of me. My hand moved on its own, my fingers closing around the cool glass and metal. I turned it over. The screen was lit up with 2 notifications from Instagram. Someone had tagged Gary in a photo. My thumbprint, which Emily had added to her phone years ago in case of emergencies. Unlocked the screen. The irony was a bitter taste in my mouth. I tapped the notification. The image that loaded felt like a punch to the gut. It was so bright, so full of life. It seemed to suck all the air out of the sterile hospital room. It was a photo of Gary, standing on the deck of a sleek, white yacht. The sun was glinting off the deep blue water behind him. He was tan, muscular, wearing expensive sunglasses and a wide, thoughtless grin. He had one arm slung around a blonde woman in a tiny bikini, and in his other hand, he held a bottle of champagne, spraying it into the air. He looked happy, carefree. He looked like a man without a single worry in the world. The location tag was clear: Marina del Rey, California. Less than an hour's drive from where his wife was lying in a hospital bed. My blood ran cold. I tapped on his profile. The photo was the newest of many. I scrolled down, my thumb moving with a mechanical Yacht motion. The past 3 weeks of his life played out in a vibrant, horrifying slideshow. There he was, clinking glasses at a rooftop bar in Hollywood. There he was, posing by a ridiculously expensive sports car on Rodeo Drive. There he was, in a crowded nightclub, a different girl on his arm. The captions were a vomit of hashtags: number living the dream, good life, number work hard, play hard, number blessed, blessed. The word detonated in my mind. He was posting about being blessed while my daughter was wasting away, fighting for every breath. The sheer, monstrous selfishness of it was beyond anything I could comprehend. Then I saw it. The final piece of the puzzle. It was a photo from a week ago. A close-up, Cheers shot with several champagne flutes. On his wrist was a new, obscenely expensive-looking watch. But it wasn't the watch that caught my eye. It was the card he'd used to pay, a corner of it visible as he held his glass. It was black, an American Express Centurion card, a black card, and I recognized it instantly. It was the supplementary card I had authorized for him, linked directly to that, in case of emergency savings account. The account I had funded, the money meant to save her life, was paying for his. The grief that had been choking me for the last few hours didn't vanish. It transformed. It cooled, hardened, and sharpened itself into a single, lethal point. The shaking in my hands stopped. The roaring in my ears went silent. All the frantic, chaotic emotion drained away, leaving behind a cold, terrifying calm. I felt a clarity I hadn't felt in years. There was no more confusion, no more doubt. There was only the truth, ugly and undeniable, and the certain knowledge of what I had to do next. I looked from the glowing screen in my hand to my sleeping daughter. Her face, even in sleep, was etched with pain and worry. She was trying to protect him, trying to hold on to the fantasy of the man she thought she married. He had used her love, her trust, and my money to abandon her at the lowest point of her life. He hadn't just betrayed her, he had sentenced her. A silent promise formed in my heart, a vow as sacred as any I'd ever made. I'll fix this. Emily, I'll take care of it. Gently, I placed her phone back on the bedside table. Screen down, I stood up, my back straight, my movements deliberate. I walked to the door, opened it, and stepped out into the quiet, fluorescent-lit hallway. The beeps and whirs of the ICU faded into the background. I pulled out my own phone, my thumb scrolling through my contacts, past the names of friends and family, until it landed on the one I needed. The 24/7's priority line for my bank. My finger hovered over the screen. It didn't tremble. I was no longer a grieving father. I was an instrument of justice, and it was time to get to work. I pressed the call button. The automated greeting from the bank was maddeningly cheerful. A pre-recorded voice, promising excellent service while my world was burning down. I navigated the menu with sharp, angry taps, my finger jabbing at the keypad until I was connected to a live person. A young woman's voice, clear and professional, came on the line. Thank you for calling the Premier Client Group. My name is Sarah. How can I help you today? I took a breath, marshaling my rage into a calm, level tone. Hello, Sarah. My name is Delbert Johnson. I need to take immediate action on my primary savings account. I gave her the account number, reading it from memory. I had stared at those statements for years, tracking the fund I'd built for my daughter's future. Of course. Mr. Johnson, she said, the sound of her keyboard clicking softly in the background. For security, can you please verify your mother's maiden name and the last 4 digits of your social? I gave her the information without a second's hesitation. There was a pause as she typed, "Okay, I have your account pulled up. How can I assist you?" I need to report unauthorized and fraudulent use of a supplementary card on this account, I said, my voice as cold and hard as a block of granite. The card is under the name Gary Peterson. I need you to cancel that card and any other supplementary cards linked to him, effective immediately, right now, while I am on the phone with you. The clicking of the keyboard stopped. I could picture her on the other end, frowning at her screen. I see the card here. See ya. It seems to be in good standing, with significant activity over the past few weeks. I am aware of the activity, I said, the calm in my voice beginning to fray. That activity is the fraud I'm reporting. My daughter, his wife, is in the ICU at this very moment. He is using her emergency medical fund to finance a lavish vacation while she is fighting for her life. I am the primary and sole owner of this account. He is a user, not an owner. Shut it down. There was another, longer pause. Sir, I understand your concern, but our policy for canceling a card typically involves. I cut her off. My patience, already worn down to a single, thin thread, finally snapped. I didn't shout. I did something far more effective. My voice dropped, losing all warmth, all pretense of civility. "Sarah," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "Listen to me very carefully. You are going to do exactly as I say. You are going to cancel that card. Then, you are going to transfer the entire remaining balance of that account into a new account, under my name only. You will do this because I am the legal owner of that money. You will do this because a man is committing a grotesque moral crime against my dying daughter. And you will do this because if one more cent is spent on champagne and yacht rentals, I will hold this bank and you personally responsible for facilitating it. Do you understand me?" The silence on the other end was absolute. Then, I heard it. Not the hesitant pecking from before, but the rapid, decisive click-clack of a keyboard being operated with sudden, urgent purpose. After what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 90 seconds. Sarah's voice came back, stripped of its corporate cheer, replaced by a subdued efficiency. "Mr. Johnson," she said quietly, "it is done. All supplementary cards under the name Gary Peterson have been permanently deactivated. The remaining funds have been transferred to a new secure account. Number ending in 8,842. A confirmation is being sent to your email as we speak. Is there anything else I can do for you tonight?" A wave of something dark and powerful washed over me. It wasn't joy. It was the grim, terrible satisfaction of a necessary amputation. The cancer had been cut out. "No, Sarah," I said, my own voice sounding foreign to my ears. That was all. I ended the call and stood there in the hallway, the phone feeling heavy and cold in my hand. It was done. The first domino had been pushed. Now, all I had to do was wait for the rest to fall. I walked back into Emily's room. The rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor was a steady, reassuring sound. She was still asleep. Her face relaxed, in a way it probably hadn't been for weeks. I sat back down in the uncomfortable visitor's chair, the vinyl sighing under my weight. I watched the slow rise and fall of her chest. I was here to protect her. The fury of the phone call receded, replaced by the deep, aching love of a father. I wasn't a monster. I was just a man who had been pushed too far. Time stretched and warped in the quiet room. Minutes felt like hours. Each beep of the monitor was a tick of a clock, counting down to the inevitable confrontation. I imagined the scene playing out. Gary, at some overpriced restaurant, handing the black card to a waiter. The waiter, returning, a polite, apologetic look on his face. "I'm sorry. Sire." The card was declined. The flash of confusion on Gary's face, followed by irritation, then dawning panic. He'd try another card. One linked to the same account. Declined. He would make an excuse. To pay with a different card if he had one. And then he would make the call. It happened about an hour later. It wasn't my phone that rang. It was Emily's. The chime cut through the quiet hum of the room. Sharp and demanding, I looked at the screen. The name glowed in bright. White letters, Gary. My heart gave a single, hard thump. This was it. I let it ring a second time. A small, cruel act of making him wait. Then, I picked up the phone. I took a deep breath, held it, and swiped to answer. I pressed the speakerphone icon. The small green light, a confirmation that this would not be a private conversation. I placed the phone on the bedside table, right next to my daughter's hand. A voice erupted from the small speaker, not with a greeting, but with a torrent of panicked, entitled rage. "Emily, what the hell, where are you? What did you do to the cards? The Amex was just declined. I'm in the middle of a dinner meeting." I let him finish, his words echoing in the sterile room. I waited a beat, letting his angry questions hang in the air, unanswered. Then, I leaned forward. "She didn't do anything. Gary," I said, my voice calm, quiet, and absolutely lethal. "It's not Emily. It's her father." The silence that followed was more profound than anything I had ever heard. I could feel it stretching across the city, from this quiet, beeping hospital room to whatever fancy restaurant he was sitting in. I could picture his face, the blood draining from it, the arrogant smirk wiped clean, replaced by the slack-jawed shock of a man whose entire world had just vanished from beneath his feet. When he finally spoke, his voice was a strangled whisper. "Delbert, what are you doing with her phone? Where is Emily?" "That's a good question. Gary, where is Emily?" I said, letting the question twist like a knife. "I'm looking right at her. She's in the ICU at Cedar Sinai. But you knew that, didn't you? You must have just forgotten while you were on your very important business trip. How is it? By the way, is the yacht in Marina del Rey comfortable? I hope you and your friends are enjoying the champagne, because it's the last drop you'll ever have that's paid for by my money." I heard a sharp intake of breath, a choked, gasping sound. You don't know what you're talking about." "Don't I?" I leaned closer to the phone. "I know that for the last 3 weeks, while my daughter has been fighting a battle for her life, you've been living it up. I've seen the pictures. Gary, the parties, the dinners, the new watch. I saw the black card you were so proud of. The one linked to the account I set up to protect my daughter. An emergency fund. And this, right here, is the emergency. I just fixed the problem." His panic finally curdled into cornered, vicious anger. His voice regained its strength. But now it was laced with a snarl. You can't do this to me. That money is half mine. We're married." "You were married," I corrected him. "A marriage ends when one person leaves the other to die alone. You made your choice. You chose the yacht. You'll regret this." "Old man," he spat, his voice rising. "This is not over. I'll divorce her. I'll take the kids. You think this is expensive. I'll drag you through the courts for years. You'll be paying me alimony and child support until the day you die." It was the threat of a desperate, pathetic man, and it was the last mistake he would ever make with me. A low, humorless laugh rumbled in my chest. "You go right ahead." "Gary," I said, my voice dripping with contempt, "you file those papers. I want you to stand up in front of a judge and explain yourself. Let's have a hearing about who gets custody of my grandchildren. Let's present evidence. Let's show the judge your Instagram feed. Let's show him your bank statements next to Emily's medical records. Let's ask him who's the more suitable parent, the loving family who will be by her side, or the parasite who abandoned his wife and stole her medical funds to party with strangers. You think you can threaten me? I have enough documented proof of your neglect and abandonment to not just win custody, but to bury you so deep in legal and financial ruin, you'll never claw your way out." The line went dead quiet again. I had taken his only weapon and turned it against him. He had nothing left. No money. No leverage. No lies that could save him now. "Don't you ever," I said, my voice a final, cold pronouncement. "Call this number again. Don't you ever come near my daughter or my grandchildren. It's over. You are nothing." I didn't wait for a response. I reached over and ended the call. The final, satisfying beep echoing briefly in the room. Silence descended. The only sound was the steady, rhythmic pulse of the heart monitor. My own heart was pounding, the adrenaline slowly beginning to recede. I swiped open the phone's screen, found his contact, and with a final, decisive tap, I blocked his number. He was gone, erased. It was then that I heard a small sound from the bed, a soft, choked sob. My head snapped up. Emily's eyes were open. They were wide, and they were filled with tears that were now streaming freely down her temples and into her hair. She hadn't been asleep. She had been awake. She had heard every single word. The rage and adrenaline vanished instantly, replaced by a wave of overwhelming love and sorrow. I stood up and moved to her side, taking her hand. It was trembling. "Oh, honey," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. She just looked at me, her eyes communicating a universe of pain, betrayal, and a tiny, flickering spark of relief. She couldn't speak. She just squeezed my hand. A faint pressure that told me everything I needed to know. The secret was out. The burden was no longer hers to carry alone. I was here, and I wasn't leaving. There are moments in your life that are perfectly silent, yet deafeningly loud. That was one of them. The sound of Emily's quiet sobs. The steady, electronic beat of the heart monitor. The weight of her trembling hand in mine. It was a language all its own. Speaking of pain, of shame, and of a profound, shattering relief. I didn't say a word. There was nothing to say. "I told you so" is the most useless phrase in the English language. A weapon for the proud, not a comfort for the broken. I just sat there, my thumb gently stroking the back of her hand, trying to pour all the strength and love I had in me through that simple point of contact. After a long time, her crying subsided into shuddering breaths. She turned her head on the pillow, her eyes, red-rimmed and exhausted, finally meeting mine. "I'm sorry, Dad," she whispered, her voice cracking. I was so stupid. I kept making excuses for him. I didn't want to believe it. "You have nothing to be sorry for," I said, my own voice thick. "You loved him. You trusted him. That's not a flaw. Emily, that's a virtue. He's the one who twisted it into a weapon against you. This is on him. All of it." That night, for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, she slept a deep, peaceful sleep. I didn't leave the chair. I watched over her, a silent guardian. As the city lights of Los Angeles cast long shadows across the floor, the fury I had felt was gone, burned away in the confrontation. What remained was a quiet, resolute purpose. The battle was won, but the war for her life was just beginning. We never heard from Gary directly again. I heard through the lawyer I hired the next morning that he'd tried to clear out their old apartment that night, only to find the locks changed. The landlord, a decent man I'd spoken to, had been happy to oblige when I explained the situation and guaranteed the rent. Gary had apparently made a scene, shouting and threatening, until someone called security He vanished after that, a ghost, consumed by his own pathetic choices. We learned later he had fled back to his parents' house in Ohio, a grown man with a taste for champagne, now living in his childhood bedroom with nothing to his name but a mountain of debt, and a few expensive, now useless, designer clothes. He was a black hole, and I had simply cut off his gravity. My focus was solely on Emily. The next morning, Dr. Evans came in to do his rounds. He looked from the monitors to Emily's face, a new, more hopeful light in his professional gaze. For the first time, he saw not just a patient, but a patient with a support system, a fighter with a second wind. "Your numbers are a little better this morning, Emily," he said, with a warmth I hadn't heard before. "Now that we have your father here to handle the administrative stress, we can focus entirely on you. There's a new immunotherapy trial that you're a perfect candidate for. It's shown remarkable results. The insurance company was hesitant, but your father's new financial arrangements have cleared the way for us to proceed immediately." He was a good man, speaking in the careful code of doctors, but I knew what he meant. The treatments that Gary had claimed they couldn't afford were now on the table. The money that had been funding yacht parties was now funding cutting-edge science aimed at saving my daughter's life. And for the first time since I'd landed at LAX, I felt a genuine flicker of hope. The following months were a grueling trench war fought in hospital corridors and chemotherapy suites. There were good days, where she had the strength to walk a lap around the nurse's station. Her laughter, a fragile but beautiful sound. There were terrible days, days of sickness and pain so profound that all I could do was hold a cool cloth to her forehead and whisper that I was there, that she wasn't alone. Through it all, I never left her side. I rented a small, furnished apartment a few blocks from the hospital and made it our base camp. I learned the names of all her nurses, the best times to get fresh coffee in the cafeteria, and how to read the subtle shifts in the lines on her heart monitor. The legal proceedings were a distant, almost abstract affair, handled by a sharp, no-nonsense lawyer in Century City. As I had predicted, Gary never showed his face. He contested nothing. His lawyer, likely working pro bono out of pity, accepted every term. The divorce was finalized in record time. Emily was granted sole custody of the children, who I had arranged to have flown in from Texas to stay with my sister, their excited voices on FaceTime calls becoming Emily's most powerful medicine. The court's judgment was swift and absolute. Gary Peterson, for all legal intents and purposes, ceased to exist in our lives. 6 months after that first terrible day, Emily walked out of Cedar Sinai on her own 2 feet. She was still thin, still fragile, but she was in remission. She walked out into the California sunshine, took a deep breath of the smoggy air as if it were the sweetest perfume, and smiled. We didn't go back to the house. I had already hired a company to pack up her and the kids' essential belongings and ship them to Texas. The rest his clothes, his golf clubs. The furniture they'd picked out together was donated. A cleansing fire. Our flight back to Texas felt like a journey home in more ways than one. As the plane descended over the flat, familiar landscape, I saw the tension that Emily had carried in her shoulders for years finally begin to release. She was leaving behind a city of ghosts and bad memories. A year can change everything. It can turn a wasteland into a garden. I had bought a small house for her and the kids just down the road from my own, and she had spent that first year making it a home. She planted a new rose garden, her hands in the rich Texas soil. Her hair grew back, thick and curly, a little grayer at the temples, which she wore with a newfound pride. The color returned to her cheeks, not from shame, but from the sun. The children, who had been so confused and quiet, were now loud and happy, their days filled with school, scraped knees, and the unwavering presence of their mother and grandfather. One warm autumn afternoon, I was sitting on her back porch, watching her teach my grandson how to properly plant a tomato seedling. She was laughing, her face smeared with a little dirt, looking more beautiful and more alive than I had seen her in a decade. The rage and the pain of that time in Los Angeles felt like a story that had happened to someone else. I thought about the money. After all the medical bills were paid, there was still a significant amount left in that new, secure account. I didn't give it back to her. Instead, I had my lawyer convert it into an ironclad trust fund, split evenly between my two grandchildren, untouchable until they were 25. The money that their father had tried to steal to finance his pathetic fantasies would now guarantee their future, their education, a down payment on a home, a life he could never have given them. The Chekhov's gun, once loaded with betrayal, had fired its final, protective shot. I never once said to Emily, "I told you so." She knew. She had lived the consequences of her misplaced trust, and she didn't need me to rub salt in a wound that was finally healing into a scar. She had suffered enough. Our strength wasn't in assigning blame. It was in the quiet, daily work of rebuilding. It was in shared dinners, in help with homework, in showing up, day after day. That was the real victory. That evening, we were all gathered around her dinner table. The house was filled with the smell of roast chicken and the sound of my granddaughter chattering about her day at school. It was a scene of simple, profound peace, a peace that had been bought at a terrible price, but was all the more precious for it. Emily caught my eye across the table. The noise of the kids faded into the background. She gave me a small, quiet smile, one that held a whole year of gratitude and unspoken understanding. "Thank you, Dad," she said, her voice clear and strong. "For everything." I just nodded, a lump forming in my throat. I didn't need any other words. I looked around the table at my family, whole and safe and happy. The storm had passed. We were home.